exactly how you're going to do your solutions lab. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's got 3 parts. You're going to do them in stations, and I'm going to give you about 15 minutes per station. So this first station is the one that takes the longest. So when you get to this station, you need to start immediately. Don't lollygag, just get to work, because this is the one you really need that full time for. You're going to have 8 cups, and you have on your table on your lab 8 different things that you need to measure. And you're going to measure how long it takes for the sugar to dissolve. Now you've got cubed, so at every station there's some cubed sugar. That's what you do for the cubed. You also, it says crushed. I'm not going to make you crush the sugar yourself. I have sugar packets. Now, the sugar packets are actually bigger than the sugar cubes, so I'm asking you to eyeball about 2/3 of these. That means that you can use 2/3 for 1 cup, but then after you use your second one, then you can combine your 2 1/3 to make a third. So you can do 2 packets for 3 cups. Some of the stations need to be stirred, so I've got some stirring rods at every station for you to stir them. It tells you to use cold and hot water, depending on the cup. I'm just asking that you use the sink. My suggestion, the second you get to your station, turn the hot water on, because it does take a while for it to heat up. And you have limited time, you need to get on that. So the second you are at your station, turn on that hot water so it can start going. Now, you will not have enough time if you try to do it one at a time. So you guys are in groups of 3 to 4. There are 8 cups. Split it up so that each person is in charge of 2 to 3. You can be doing them at the same time, measuring the time. Once you see that all the sugar has dissolved, write that time down. Now, some of them are going to take a really long time, like the cold water, cubed sugar, no stirring. That's going to take a long time. That's why I'm asking you to cap it at 5 minutes. So once you've hit 5 minutes, write that time down. Maybe also write down an observation about how much was dissolved, so that you can compare all the ones that were 5 minutes if you do happen to get more than one. So remember, read through it. It tells you if it should be crushed or cubed. It tells you if you should stir or not, and it tells you if you should use hot or cold water. Before you dive right into your lab though, I want you to make predictions. There is a spot in the table that asks you to predict. I want you to predict which one's going to finish first, which one's going to finish last. You're just giving me a ranking. So there's the first one. One thing I do want to tell you, when you are done, make sure these cups are rinsed out very, very, very well, because sugar is very sticky. And if it's wet and it's sugar water, these are going to be sticking together if they're not cleaned out well. So make sure you rinse it out very, very well. That also being said, if you get sugar on the table, which most likely you will, make sure you clean that off really, really well. It's best to wipe it off first dry, and then after you think you've got all the sugar gone, that's when you should add the water. Rinse it, just wipe it down with a wet paper towel, but please wait till all the sugar, as best as you can see, is off. So there's station 1. Station 2 is really short as far as what you're supposed to actually do, but there's a lot more questions involved. So if you're waiting during that 15 minutes, I would suggest you get your questions done on this lab, for this station. You've got some already poured and measured cups of oil. Each group is only going to use 1 cup, so there's multiple ones there, but just use 1. What you're going to do is you're going to take a drop of dye, and you're going to see what happens. You're going to take some sugar. You're going to have some sugar packets. You're going to drop them in. You're going to see what happens, and you're going to write that in your observations in the table. Now, let me tell you what you're trying to see what happens. You're trying to see if it's going to dissolve or not. You're going to try to see if it mixes or not. Is it miscible? Is it soluble in the oil? The other cup you're going to use for water. So you can pour the water yourself. And again, put a drop of dye. See what happens. Put some sugar in. See what happens. You're using the same cup to test both. Write your observations. Now your questions say, why did different things happen? I'm telling you, focus on polarity. Focus on polarity when you are answering those questions. When you are done, rinse out the water cup and leave it, because every group's using the same cup, but the oil, you can just throw this cup away. So there's station 2. Okay, let's talk about station 3. On station 3, you're going to get a little card that tells you exactly what to calculate. You're either going to calculate the molarity or you're going to calculate the grams or the mass of a solution of Kool-Aid. We are assuming that Kool-Aid is sucrose. So you can look at your reference table to see what formula that is. It might even be on the card itself. But we're going to assume it's sucrose. Before you do anything for the lab, you should sit down with your group and you should get that calculated. Maybe even checked with your teacher before you dive into measuring. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go to where the balance is. I do only have one balance for the whole class, so you're going to be sharing it with the other group who's also currently working on this. And you're going to measure out some sucrose using a scapula, and make sure you first tare your balance, so turn it on, put the weigh boat on the balance, hit the 0 button, a lot of times it's the on button again, and wait until it says 0, 0, 0. Then you're going to measure the mass of the sucrose using the balance. When you're done, once you've measured that, again, be careful with the Kool-Aid. If you make a mess, wipe it down because it will get very sticky. What you're going to do, you're going to use a volumetric flask. Let me show you how this works. You are going to put the solid in first. You can take your weigh boat, you can carefully bend it kind of like this, and you can pour it directly into the flask. Just like that. When you're done, then pour the water in about to here and mix it in and try to get that Kool-Aid to dissolve as best as you can. Then when you think it's dissolved as best as you can, go ahead and carefully add water until it gets to that line that you can see right there on the volumetric flask. I'm not sure if you can see it on the video, but there's a line on the long part of the flask, and that's where the water level should go. If you go above it, you're no longer at that concentration you measured. You have to be very careful. Technically, if you go above it, you'd have to completely restart. Now, if you do go above it, talk to your sub about it, and you guys can decide what you want to do. But you got to be very careful. If you have to use a pipette, do it. Those are at your stations. You remember the bottom of the meniscus should be right on the line. And then once you've added enough water to get it right on that line, you're looking at it eye level. You're seeing that it's right there. At that point, you can stir it around a little better. And what I'm asking is that you take this, write on a small piece of paper, maybe even your molarity card on the back, write the exact concentration, carry it up to the front of the room, on the desk at the front, and set it in order of all the concentrations. So at the end of class, you'll be able to compare 6 different solutions and 6 different concentrations. Then, after you've done that, at the very end of class, I'll have each group come back up and clean out their volumetric flasks. So there you have it. I hope you really enjoy this lab.